And good afternoon, everyone. This is Patrick, and welcome back to Underdog Dueling, where we take a look at hidden gems and archetypes that people might be sleeping on and compare their relevance to today's meta. So, I have with you guys another deck profile, and this one's kind of been a fan favorite TCG exclusive for a while that's gotten only a little bit of support over the years, including a more or less a counterpart archetype that has actually seen competitive success. And today I have with you Noble Knights of the Round Table. Everything is based on Arthurian legend, and it's mostly level 4 light monsters, and it functions as a Xyz heavy deck that you can swap for a few cards to make it into purely a synchro deck, or even kind of a hybrid of the two. This deck revolves around utilizing summoning out as many Noble Knights as possible to go into your Xyz plays, and then equipping any of your Noble Knight cards to try and push for game or get any additional effects. As all the Noble Knights, all the Noble Arms cards, the equip spells, share the exact same effect where if they are destroyed, you get to target another card and re-equip it, which definitely comes in handy, because anytime they're sent to the graveyard, they're effectively destroyed, so there's no getting rid of them. And one of your main boss monsters can just bring them straight back on summon, which is really cool. Also, I love the artwork. As a huge D&D player, I love the artwork, so that should go without saying. But anyways, let's go ahead and dive in. If you want to see more, please remember to like and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at Soren's Lair. Okay, and we go ahead and have our main deck here. So please bear with me on this. Some of these cards have very long effects, but I will go ahead and try and relay them as best as I can. Starting off, we have 3 copies of Noble Knight Kustenin. Basically, if you control a Noble Arms equipped card, you can special summon it from the hand. You can only do this once per turn, but if you synchro, Xyz, or link summon using this card on the field, basically when this card is special summoned, you can normal summon an additional Noble Knight this turn, but you can't special summon from the extra deck except for Noble Knight monsters. This basically allows you to just keep getting your plays online, because even if you do bring it out and then immediately Xyz summon, once it's into the graveyard, the effect will trigger and you can re-equip. This is going to be one of your main monsters that you want to go into as much as you can. Next, we have 3 copies of Noble Knight Boars. Noble Knight Boars makes it to where this card is a normal monster while face up on the field, but when it gets a Noble Arms equipped spell, it becomes Dark Attribute, its level is increased by 1, and then you can reveal any 3 Noble Arms cards from your deck, and your opponent randomly chooses one of them and the rest go to the graveyard. Set in your graveyard for additional plays, so that way you can just bring them all back. Now, unfortunately, since they were sent to the graveyard and not destroyed, you can't trigger their effects, but again, our extra deck is kind of meant to kind of bring them back. Next up, 3 copies of Noble Knight Brothers. Brothers can only attack if you have exactly 3 Noble Knight monsters and no other monsters, but when this is normal summon, you can special summon up to 2 Noble Knight monsters from your hand, but it locks you into Noble Knights for the rest of the turn. Then once per turn, you can target any Noble Knight and or Noble Arms cards, shuffle all 3 into the deck to draw a card. This gives you really good recurability, and allows you to constantly go into your plays and immediately set things up for an Xyz summon. Next, we've got 3 copies of Noble Knight Madrat. Madrat works similarly to Boars, to where it's a normal monster, but when it gets a Noble Arms equipped spell, this card becomes dark, its level is increased by 1, and if you control no other monsters outside of him, you can special summon a Noble Knight monster from your deck in defense position and then destroy one equipped spell you control. Basically, this doesn't really matter, you destroy and it's going to come back to whatever it is that you're doing. So yeah, this and Boars are kind of your main go-to plays if you're having trouble getting some of your plays online, if you don't have something like Kustenin or Brothers. We then run 2 copies of Noble Knight Gawain. Gawain has the simple effect where if you control a light normal monster, you can special summon this card from your hand in face-up defense position. Basically, you can either do Boars or Madrat and get a free special summon, since we don't run Artorgus, the standard vanilla monster. But this does allow you to, again, get your special summons out to where you can potentially do normal additional Xyz summons in a turn. Plus, he's a 1900 beater, and that is never a bad thing. For our last actual Noble Knight, we run 1 Noble Knight Dristan. If you control another Noble Knight monster, your opponent cannot target monsters with less than 1800 attack for attacks or with card effects, and then when a Noble Arms equipped spell is destroyed, target 1 card on the field and destroy it. We really only run 1 copy because he doesn't really come up that often, but he's just kind of a good form of removal. Next, for the last of the Noble knight type cards in archetype, we have Gwennifer, Queen of Noble Arms. She's a level 2 spellcaster that allows you to target one noble knight monster you control and equip this card from your hand or graveyard to the target. And she does count as a noble arms, so it does facilitate the effects of some of your other monsters. Basically, the monster gains 300 attack, and then depending on the attribute of the equipped monster, if it's light, you can destroy this card instead if they would be destroyed by a card effect. If it's dark, then at the start of the damage step, you can destroy any monster that the equipped monster battles and then destroy her. She's just kind of a good way, again, just general extension and basically some battle protection and a little bit of battlefield control. Now, unfortunately, she does not have the recursion effect like all the other noble arms, but you don't really need it. But I only run her at 2, no need to really run at 3 because we already run so many equipped spells as it is. Then for our last 3 monsters, I'm just running 3 Droll and Lockbird just to prevent my opponent from being able to add cards from the deck to the hand. And basically for the rest of the turn locks out both of us, which is always nice. Next up for our spell lineup, as we run no traps in this deck, but we do run a lot of spells, we have 2 copies of Heritage of the Chalice. This allows you to add 1 Noble Knight and or 1 Noble Arms card from your deck or graveyard to your hand, and if a Noble Knight monster equipped with a Noble Arms equipped spell is destroyed by battle, you can add this card back to your hand, but you can only use 1 effect per turn and only once that turn. This gets you whatever card you may need, as you can do either Noble Knights or Noble Arms, so depending on what your hand looks like, go nuts. We then played 2 copies of Last Chapter of Noble Knights, one of the few platinum rares that I have, and I personally like the look of them. It's just there's something unique about it. It gives it a sheen kind of fitting for an Arthurian legend archetype. It just makes everything look regal. But Last Chapter makes it to where if your opponent controls a monster and you control nothing, you can target an equipped spell and 1 appropriate Noble Knight monster in your graveyard, special summon that monster, and then equip that equipped spell to the appropriate monster, but you can only activate 1 per turn. This gives you a little bit of recursion, pretty much as your stuff is going to the graveyard, unless your stuff is already in the graveyard, that you use it and you just have a clear board and it's still your turn. Next, we only run 1 copy of the field spell, Noble Knights of the Round Table. During your end phase, you can activate each of these effects up to the number of different Noble Knight cards with different names in your graveyard and or you control. Now, unfortunately, this does not specify Noble Arms and Noble Knights. It just specifically has cards with Noble Knights in the name. So if there are 3 or more, you can send a Noble Knight card from your deck to your grave. 6 or more, special summon a Noble Knight from your hand, then equip a spell from in Noble Arms equipped spell to the monster. 9 or more, you target 1 Noble Knight monster in your graveyard, add it to the hand. Then if you have all 12 with different names, you get to draw a card. We only run this at 1 because it doesn't really come into play very often, but when it does, it could be kind of fun, especially if you're trying to recuperate all of your monsters. We then play 2 copies of Glory of the Noble Knights. It is a quick play spell that allows you to target 1 Noble Knights monster you control and equip it with 1 equipped spell from your deck that can equip to this target. You can only activate once per turn. Fairly straightforward, it just helps to keep your... So this basically is just used to kind of keep your field full with equipped spells and just constantly recycle them. Now for our Noble Arms, we run 2 copies of Noble Arms of Destiny. Basically, once per turn, the monster cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, and then it can re-equip itself. This one's always kind of good to where once per turn, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, so... And keep in mind, this is a soft once per turn, so if you had multiples, you can go ahead and get 2 forms of protection. Then we run 2 copies of Noble Arms Caliburn. The monster equipped with it gains 500 attack, and once per turn you gain 500 life points. And all the Noble Arms, like I said, carry pretty much the same effect. We then play 2 copies of Noble Arms Excaliburn. Basically, any card equipped with this cannot be targeted by an opponent's card effects, and then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card, target 1 Noble Knight Xyz monster you control, and special summon 1 Xyz monster with a different name by using the other card as material. But this does count as it's Xyz materials, and it is counted as an Xyz summon. However, you can only use this effect once per turn. Now, okay, I lied. Majority, all except for maybe 2 of the Noble Knights cards can re-equip themselves. This one's just good for extra protection. We then play 2 copies of Noble Arms Gallatin. A monster equipped with this gains 1,000 attack, and then during each standby phase, it loses 200 attack, and it can just re-equip itself, but this allows you to continue to try and push for game. We then run 2 copies of In for Noble Arms Haute Claire. The only one that doesn't actually re-equip, one of the couple that doesn't re-equip. And basically, you can target one face-up monster you control. This turn, you cannot declare an attack except with that monster, and it can make a second attack during each battle phase, but then you destroy this card. Then if this card is sent to the graveyard because the monster is sent to the graveyard, you can blow up a card on the field. I do run this because this really is the only Infernal equip spell that actually stacks, since we're not doing a synchro build like with the Infernal Knights. And this is just a good way to try and get your Xyz monsters to continue to push by being able to attack twice. You stack them with other cards and you're in for a fun time. We then play one Clarent and one Arfeditor. So Clarent makes it where you can pay 500 life points and the monster can attack directly this turn. And again, if you combine it with something like, if you combine Clarent and Howlclair, basically, you can pay 500 life points, and this card can attack twice, as well as attacking directly, so you can inflict up to a good, easily inflict a good, like, 5,000 points of damage, which is always kind of fun. Then Arfeditor makes it to where you can target one set card your opponent controls. This card loses 500 attack, and you destroy that target. And they will re-equip themselves. Now for the last bit, we run 2 Tides of the Brethren to pay 2,000 to summon out any additional Noble Knights you need with different names, 1 Rhoda for our search power, and 1 Double or Nothing because we do run the Utopia package. And now let's go into our extra deck. We're starting off with 2 copies of Isolde, 2 Tales of Noble Knights, one of the more busted Link monsters that are actually almost generic. Ever since this card was released, it simply requires any 2 warrior monsters, kind of making it a staple. When this card is Link summoned, you can add 1 warrior monster from your deck to your hand, but you can't normal summon or special summon monsters with that name, nor activate their effects. But then you can send any number of equipped spells with different names from your deck to the graveyard to special summon 1 warrior monster from your deck whose level equals the number of cards sent. Ideally, what you would do with this is send 4 of your Noble Knight equipped spells of your Noble Knight equipped spells to summon out any monster that you might need to facilitate your plays. When you go into your Xyz monsters, you can then get majority of those equipped spells back. And again, if you're playing a warrior deck, this is kind of a staple, so keep that in mind. I thought about running this in my Element Sabers, which could actually be kind of fun, because I would need to run a couple of equipped spells though, so I don't know about that. I'd have to look at the levels. We then run only 1 copy of Ferocious Flame Swordsman. Just requires 2 monsters with different names. All warrior monsters on the field gain 500 attack, and if it's destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect while in the monster zone, you can target 1 non-link warrior monster in your graveyard and special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field. It only has 1300 attack and defense, but actually has pretty good arrows, and does allow for a little bit of recursion should you need it. We then play 2 copies of Artorigus, King of the Noble Knights. This is kind of one of the ones that you'll be going into more often, but it is a 2k rank 4, requiring any 2 level 4 Noble Knights. When it's Xyz summoned, you can target up to 3 Noble Knight equipped spells with different names and equip those targets to this card, but then you can detach 1 Xyz material and destroy any number of spell and traps on the field up to the number of Noble Arms equipped spells. So ideally, you're gonna, using something like Isolde, you're gonna bring this thing out with 3 equipped spells, and so you can detach 1 material and basically get 3 pops of anything that you're running to potentially slow down your opponent. We then play 3 copies of Sacred Noble Knight of King Custennin. Basically, same thing, this requires just any 2 or more, though he does have higher defense. You can detach any number of materials from this card, then target that many cards your opponent controls and return them to the hand. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the card effect and sent to the graveyard, special summon 1 Noble Knight Xyz monster free of charge, and you attach this card from the graveyard to that material. So basically, this is actually a good way to go into another copy of Artorigus, so that way you can just kind of recur any of your other plays, plus he makes a good 2500 defense wall. Next, we run 2 Sacred Noble Knights of Artorigus, which requires 2 level 5 Noble Knight monsters, effectively Boars and Madrat. Basically, when this card is Xyz summoned, you can target up to 3 Noble Arms equipped spells and equip them to this card in the same vein as Artorigus Standard. Then you can attach 1 material, target 1 monster on the field, and destroy it. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 level 4 or higher Noble Knight monster and special summon it. This does help kind of recur your plays, and does give Boars and Madrat something to do when they are level 5. and Dark attribute. We then play 1 Dragaris for usually some additional draw power or doubling the attack. 1 Abyss Dweller, basically to detach material and lock your opponent out of their graveyard. And then we run 1 Utopia the Lightning, 1 regular Utopia, and Utopia Double to be able to swing over your opponent for 10k using Utopia Double. So, for those that don't know, the way this actually generally works is you would summon out Utopia, and then what you would do is go ahead and you would go into Utopia Double, use its effect to add double or nothing. You would then Xyz into regular Utopia, who now has 5,000 attack. And ideally what you would do is you would go ahead and enter battle and attack into any monster, since you can't attack directly when you do. You use his effect to detach a material to negate your own attack, then activate double or nothing, which allows you to attack again since you negated your previous attack, and the attack is doubled. So you are swinging with a 10k Utopia that will beat over anything with 2,000 attack points or lower, and you will OTK your opponent. So this is just kind of a good way to close out some games. But otherwise, I just hope you enjoyed this. This is actually kind of a fun deck to mess around with. It's a fun Xyz engine. I might look at other rank 4s like Exciton Knight and just maybe some other generic stuff. That could be fun to help facilitate all of our plays. But otherwise, yeah. Hope y'all enjoy, and please look forward to more test hands and deck profiles as they come about. And until then, signing out.